It's the first pod post Age of Attraction release, and there's a lot of good stuff in here. For starters, they're recording this on a day when Nick and Natalie are doing press, so they're all dressed up for the occasion, and Nick is wearing a tie and says, very on brand for Epstein Mountain, that he feels like he looks like a high school teacher. Then they get into Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And Nick goes off on one about how he thinks they're all just going to be competing with each other now. They're famous. It's going to be some kind of catfight for the whole season. Sierra, who I'm convinced hates Nick and Natalie, she says, well, they're actually really supportive of each other in their career successes. And then she says, and she must have been being shady to do this. I love it. She says, I read an interview Whitney did recently where she talked about all of the women turning up for opening night on Broadway. This is that interview. This is the interview Whitney did recently where she talked about all of the women showing up for her opening night on Broadway to support her and refuses to be mom-shamed for it. Yeah, this is the same interview that talks about how much Nick Viall sucks. They ask Whitney about the whole mom-shaming thing, and Whitney says, I didn't listen to the full episode. I was so confused because I was like, this feels so left field. Is this because I always say no to your podcast? Legitimately, that crossed my mind, she says. I didn't want to respond because sometimes no response is the best response. But that perspective to me is crazy. I would want my mom, my daughter, any woman to go fulfill her dreams. It seems like such an obvious thing to me. I don't need to state the obvious. And honestly, she adds, smirking like a cheerleader with a secret, the internet did it for them. Of course, they don't acknowledge it. They move right along. Then they have these two on the pod, Derek and Andrew, the two significantly older dudes with the college-age girlfriends. And Nick says to them, you guys are like my fellow age-ambiguous people, you know? Where it's like, how old are you, you know? And he says, well, I can say from personal experience, get ready. Get ready for the opinions about why you look the way you do that have nothing to do with your genetics or moisturizing. Yes, people will have a lot of crazy things to say. Where is this discourse on Nick looking so amazing for his age? What's his secret? Andrew, who has 2 kids, says he's not interested in dating anyone with kids because it's too much baggage. Andrew, it also comes to light, is a big fan of Ask Nick, and Nick is completely obsessed with that and wants to have a long conversation about it. Andrew says that Nick's advice got him through a weird place in his life. And he's gushing. Nick says, like, I don't tailor my Ask Nick episodes for women. I just tailor for anyone who's interested in this topic. And so I think it's cool to see that the men we casted, you didn't cast anyone, bro. Anyway, that the men we casted at least be reflective and be interested in just talking about their past behaviors or just reflecting on their past relationships and just being vulnerable at that. They ask him about Libby, the 22-year-old that he's with on the show. He says she's got a really deep side to her. And Nick says, yeah, I mean, the thing I've learned about being with Natalie and age gap relationships. Save this, pens out. Okay, are you ready? You have to respect them. They have to be your equal. And you have to respect them. So after the interview plays, they're back in the household with the Gen Zs. And they're talking about how young they both look. They could play high school students on the CW network. And Nick's obviously desperate to relay to them all that. I've got an Ask Nick fan here. Yeah, he says, I honestly think it's a huge green flag for, men like Andrew and Derek to on their own as single men, listen to content that might help them process their emotions and feelings. That's something I wish more men would be open to doing. And I think it just speaks to it seems like we have some high quality guys who've left their kids at home to go pursue women whose frontal lobes have not fully developed yet.